my concern is it's okay if it's doing great, but if it's done and we don't offer special anymore or something like that, you know what I mean?
Oh, we will never, under my, when I'm here as the assistant superintendent, we will not stop offering special classes, or highly specialized, for two reasons. Some children need that, and their parents want it. That's one reason. The other is the regulations require it. So I cannot say, I would not say, and I'm not allowed to say, we're going to eliminate all of our substantially separate classes. It's illegal to do that, and there are children who need it, and their parents want it. So that's going to be true, all right? So if you have a child in a substantially separate program, and they're doing very well, and they're progressing, and they're learning, let's recognize that and be proud of it and feel good about it. And then ask ourselves, well, let's try out, somebody described gradual inclusion or partial inclusion. That's a really good idea, to try to be in a substantially separate program, but spending a little bit of time in general education class. See how they do in that situation before you say, I want them full-time in general education. I'm not, and yet, I know some parents who are in this room right now whose children are in full inclusion and doing great. And that's what they want. So, I just think that, you know, my two kids are really different from one another. I'll be willing to bet that your kids are different from one another, and your kids are different from the other kids in their classes. So we really have to stay away from making a generalization about kids. There's a question back there.
What if the kid
I missed the last one.
Oh, okay. So what if the child is in a substantially separate class and not succeed? I'll tell you what your rights are, and I'll tell you what I would recommend. Let me start with what I would recommend. You should call one of those people that I named in my office and say to them, I have a child in a substantially separate class and they're not succeeding. Because what that probably means is we're not doing the right things for your child. We're not teaching your child appropriately, or we're not giving your child the support services that they need. Okay? And we have to fix that. One of my assistant directors has to fix that. You're right. You have a right, and that is withdraw your approval on the ed plan. So if the ed plan as it's written right now and as it's being implemented right now is not working, and we don't help, we don't do what we should do, and I seriously want to say, I want you to expect us to do something, but if we don't, then you have the right to withdraw your approval on the IEP, and you should do that. It is the legal lever that you have as a parent.
And it works, because that actually happened to me, where we got switched to the Conley, and I accepted the plan, but I denied the placement, and they somehow got him back in the Sumner where he was, because he was being moved. And you know, I found over the years that if you work really closely with the people, they're not the people there now, but
right.
When you work very closely with the people at Unified Services, they really want to help your kids succeed, and when you really want them to succeed, they want them to succeed. And so when you work together with them, I find that we've been very successful.
Good. It's not called Unified Services anymore. That's okay. It's called Special Education and Student Services. It doesn't really matter. Yeah. Oh, did you have a question? I'm sorry, you're so quiet over here. Why don't you go ahead?
I want to change the topic. My concern is mental health. I have two children, very different ages, elementary, high school. One's for learning issues, ADHD, one is mental health. And I have great success with him, no problems with school. With the mental health IEP, I've had very bad experiences, lack of understanding of mental health, resource for teachers that have no understanding of mental health, a child that feels like they don't belong there, no one's helping them, why am I in this room? Like, it's very very frustrating. And luckily, she's at a new school, a different school after her, and maybe in the school setting she's doing better. And she was at a very different school before. She was in exam school, and I had a really bad experience with mental health. So I want to know, is anything being done for the children with mental health?
Yeah. So
More understanding, more knowledge.
we haven't expanded. This year I expanded our department. I haven't mentioned this at all at these meetings, but we have 3 units. One is called mental health, the other is called related services, and the third is called medical services. The mental health unit has recently been renamed behavioral health services, but that's only because that's what the state calls it now. Okay. We have actually, tomorrow afternoon, the superintendent and I are meeting with officials from Children's Hospital and a number of other large organizations in Boston to launch the Boston Public Schools Mental Health Initiative, which will put a full array of mental health services in every school. Some of you know that was one of my intentions when I got here, so it took a year and a half to get there. So going forward, very quickly actually, by after the holidays, the amount of mental health services is going to start increasing in the schools.
That's fantastic.
She was at an exam school, and I wanted to get her to see the therapist that's there. Oh, she's full. So
Right.
my child's an IEP for anxiety. What do you mean she's full? Like, there's a lot of that.
Yeah. So the other thing I would say is that there is an assistant director for behavioral health services. She's a wonderful woman. Her name is Andrea Amador, A-M-A-D-O-R. And for a particular child who's got mental health needs and not getting the services, you should call Andrea Amador. Except I don't know her phone number. Does anybody know the number for the offices at BLA? I'm sorry about that. I'll get a number for you. Oh, okay. Andrea Amador, A-M-A-D-O-R. You have,
Yeah, I was just sort of, earlier you were talking about expanding inclusion classrooms for next year. I was just wondering, what is there a number attached to that yet? Or, and actually a follow-up question. And you said that there were 18 schools that were slotted to be on this network. Can the district compel schools to have included classrooms? There's a population that needs to be served. The district should be able to compel schools to have a SPED component.
right. We can.
That seems oddly, policy-wise, that seems dangerous.
It hasn't been our approach so far. Our approach so far has been to cast a wide net to all the principals in the district and say, anybody who's interested in getting started on working on this, contact me. And then I sit down and we talk about the possibilities. So 2 things are going to happen for next year. The 10 schools, well, 4 of those schools have been implementing inclusion for a long time. The 10 schools are going to expand the number of classes and the number of seats in them. The other 8 schools that are already in the network, sorry? No, yeah, starting next year. So there are a larger number of, if you want to think of it, inclusive seats this year than there were last year. I don't actually have the count yet. I have somebody back in my office working on counting the increase, but I don't know that exactly. Those same schools will increase the number again next year. And we're going to be working with the 8 schools in the network that are not yet implementing to begin implementation next September, because they've already signed on. If I have the chance to come back and talk about the budget situation, one of the reasons that some of those 8 schools didn't implement is the budget didn't work out right. So the budgeting for inclusive seats is very complicated. I'll go into the details if anybody's interested. It's a hard thing for a school to go from having a separate program to having an inclusive program from a budget point of view. And a number of different reasons why. Some of the 8 schools were very interested in getting started, but we couldn't work the budget out. And it isn't about there being enough dollars in the district. It's about there being enough dollars in those schools. So I'll try to come back to you in another month or two with a report on what was the expansion this year and what do we think the expansion is going to be next year. Here's what I would say. If you, for your child, if you individually as a family, you're interested in exploring more inclusive opportunities for your child, we should do that soon. We should be talking soon. And we should do it one child at a time at this point. So we should talk about, so where is your child going to school right now? What opportunities are there? And then if not there, where are the opportunities that you might want to consider? Do that during the year this year. Let's not wait until, the end of the school year.
But in high school, do we have no choice? Because if we're going from 8th grade to high school, aren't all high schools inclusion, right? Or I don't know. I just don't know because
No, they're not. In fact, we have a real shortage of inclusive seats at high schools right now. We have 3 or 4 high schools that are lining up for next September to become inclusive high schools.
So it's all or nothing. It's either substantially separate or generally.
Oh, no. There is a version of service delivery that we call resource right now. And that's kind of a lame version of partial inclusion. So a year from now, we'll be moving to full and partial inclusion in some schools, which is much more effective. So if your child's moving from middle school to high school, is there anybody here whose child is finishing middle school this year and going to high school next year? You might want to talk to Diane over here because she's going to help me sort of get organized around inclusive high schools.
Okay.
So we know what are they, where are they, what do they offer?
So they're having that meeting this Saturday, the high school.
Showcase, I know.
Right.
You should go. But you really want to talk to Diane too, because if we're going to do good, successful inclusion at the high school level, we're going to have to put in some extra. Yeah.
The code of conduct of the booklet that you keep on school sometimes.
Code of conduct?
Yes.
Yes.
On page 34, 35, 36, I believe is a legal paper that you must sign as a parent if the child is underage. On page 34, I believe, they have a small place where a child that is over 5 years old, 5 or older, have to sign. How do that apply to a special ed kid? They have to sign. My son doesn't even know how to write his name. He do his letter J back.
Well, I'm sorry that we aren't yet.
And I don't see anything about special ed. Just
Well,
in that part.
the state law, state regulations say, unless the IEP team determines otherwise, the regular ed code of conduct, the general code of conduct applies to all students. But if your child's evaluation team said, no, the regular code of conduct doesn't apply to my child, there are accommodations or changes, then that code of conduct applies. Now, I'll take note of the fact that we need to figure out what the accommodation is for children at 5 years old who don't sign their names yet. I'm sorry about that. I think you can probably...
Then I don't feel comfortable returning this to school because they say from the very beginning, they give you a sticker where they say, please look carefully at these 3 pages because they're illegal.
Right, so here's what I would say, but I'll if you write it down on your form, I'll get back to you about it. I would say that you as the parent can explain to the youngster what the document is saying, and you can sign for your youngster. Let's not, and if anybody gives you trouble about it, have them see me. The child signing is really giving kids who have the wherewithal to agree to this code of ethics. We want them to agree. We want them to make that. But not all children are ready to do that at 5 years old.
If you mentioned to Joel about getting me out of the computer, he won't have a tantrum right now. So it doesn't apply to
I know, kids are different. They're different from one another. Other questions or comments? Yeah.
I got a question. My daughter's in second grade next year, but the thing is, she's at the Conlon right now.
Where?
The Conlon in Rosendale.
Yeah.
They don't offer, inclusion K2 or second grade. So I'm trying to find out because I'm not getting any details from the school. What schools am I ever offer this?
So you want your child to be in an inclusive class in grade 2?
I just wanted to go to school, period.
Oh,
I don't know what school offers.
good point. There's a woman who's the head of our early childhood office. Her name is Marianne Malloy. I would call Marianne and say, here's the situation I'm in. How should I be thinking about next year? She knows everything about the early childhood situation. Now, I do know it's a challenge in the school district that we offer integrated early childhood programming. But then when they move into the second grade, not all schools have inclusive classes in the second grade. So, unfortunately, some families have chosen to keep their children in that school, but they move then into a special education class, which I don't really like.
Yeah, I don't want my kids singled out.
But there are other schools that do have inclusive grade 2 classes. So Marianne can help you figure that out.
I have a question. I hear how many programs you guys have, but getting something for train the parents.
Say that again, I missed it.
I listen to a lot of programs.
Yeah.
Right? Some programs to train the fathers to help the kids in the house. That's good because we spend more time and we leave it whole job for the teachers. And we interest to learn in the house to help the kids in the house.
Did everybody hear the question? Interested in knowing what opportunities there are for parents to learn how to support the learning of their children at home, right? Okay, so John, we're going to have to sort of put our heads together and figure out what's available now and what we need to put together. I don't think, maybe SpedPac already has that. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Parent University, and you can negotiate in your IEP home visits for like an ABA or OT, SP to come in and see how you're interacting with your child and make sure that the program that's in place in the school is what you're doing at home. I mean, they're not going to turn you into a special needs teacher. You're a parent, but you can talk to your IEP team and say, is there a way for somebody to come in and show me what to do around the house?
Here's what I would say. Take one of these pieces of paper over here and put your name and phone number on it and put down that you're interested in parent support programs.
Yeah, they're called consultation hours.
I would add that that sounds like an excellent option for a workshop. So we'll work on developing that. We have a workshop once a month. So we have about 5 more minutes.
Yeah, okay.
My daughter is 5 years old.
5 years old?
Yeah, and she was in a class of 10 to 12, 10 sometimes. It took us very long time to get the right class, but I'm glad we came last month, and this meeting is very helpful. They hired somebody, now they invited me to do it, and I just want to say thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. What school? Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, your comments helped us get that done. You're welcome.
And thank you for coming here tonight.
Oh, sure. I'll try to come every month. You won't always want to hear from me, but I'll try to come.
Thank you.
Thank you.